Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Ensuring the Best Talent. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend this session. Our webinar today is brought to you by the Kaleidoscope Group. My name is Barbara Sanner and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Before we start, we wanted to let you know about submitting questions today. Please use the section called Questions in your GoToWebinar control panel. Simply type into the box that says Enter a question for staff and click Send. My colleague, Jody Matus, Marketing Director for the Kaleidoscope Group, will be fielding questions today and will ask them to our presenters. Should you have any technical difficulties, hopefully that won't be the case, but if you do, please type those into the question box as well, and I'll do my best to help you fix that. And we hope you'll take a few minutes at the end of the session to complete the survey. When you exit today, the survey will automatically appear in your browser window and should take only about 2 minutes to complete. Your feedback is very important to us, and so we thank you in advance for completing the survey for us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the presenter for today's webinar. Doug Harris is Chief Executive Officer of the Kaleidoscope Group based in Chicago, Illinois. He has more than 25 years of diversity and inclusion experience and has worked in D&I for the majority of his career. In 1981, he started with Procter & Gamble and joined Kaleidoscope in 1990. As CEO, Doug empowers organizations to achieve their diversity and inclusion goals, helping them to create customized diversity strategies. Doug has consulted for numerous clients worldwide, including Caterpillar, HP, and Coca-Cola, and holds degrees in economics and sociology from Tufts University. So now I'll turn it over to Doug to get us started.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be on this webinar called Best Talent. I also know those who live east of me are easing their way into afternoon, so good afternoon to you as well. When we talk about best talent, and we really talk a lot about, I guess what we call comfort hiring or hiring your best friend, the goal of this best talent webinar is to really get us to the place where we can both think about the importance, understand the business value, and navigate through our own lens to make sure that we are bringing in the best talent for our organization. So many companies have had efforts for years as I've been in this space and still have not achieved the goal of best talent. And one of the things that we believe is that the reason why that's not taking place is because there's not enough ownership for managers to help achieve that goal of best talent. The diversity department is committed, the senior leaders are committed, but we really have to put ownership and understanding of the value within managers to get that done. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Very excited to kind of share this topic and share this kind of unique approach to making that happen. Now, before we get into it, I would just like to know who exactly is participating on this webinar based on function. So we're going to have a poll, but those functions are human resources, business partner, kind of recruiter, or talent acquisition, management, D&I practitioner, or other. So we're going to have a poll to give you a chance to vote to who exactly is participating on this webinar today.
That's right, and so if you haven't joined a webinar before, you just simply hover your mouse over the button that you want to select and click that, and it will collect your vote from you, and we'll put those results up on the screen here shortly. We'll give everyone a few seconds to submit their vote right there. And I will just mention that if anyone would like to get a copy of today's PowerPoint, please just submit that in the questions section. Put PowerPoint, all you have to do is put PowerPoint in and click send, and we'll capture that information and make sure that you get that if it's something that you want. Okay, great. So we've got a great submission here for our poll questions. We're going to go ahead and close that, and I'll put the results up on the screen. So it looks like we've got 34% are human resources recruiters or talent acquisition representatives. 22% are D&I practitioners. 19% each are either HR business partners or in management. And 6% are categorizing themselves as other.
Good deal. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a good cross section. And again, hopefully what we share will add value to all of those different roles and at least give an understanding of an approach to, again, commit the entire organization, but more specifically, people managers to this topic of receiving the best talent. So here's our agenda for the webinar. And the way we will do this webinar is we'll probably spend time together as far as me presenting for close to an hour. And then after that, we'll have some time for questions where we'll just kind of hear that what you want to share. Now, don't wait till that point to ask questions. The chat is open right now. The chat is being managed, and we'll be able to insert those questions. But I did want to say we're going to probably linger on for about 15 minutes or so after the webinar if there are additional questions. So the agenda says setting the stage. Just set context around what do we mean by best talent. And then we're going to do a best talent overview, which really kind of identifies the entire process of how do you get to the place and create ownership in all lanes for best talent. Then the third piece is what are the workshop highlights? So there is a component of that best talent overview that consists of managers going through a 4-hour education process to really understand and navigate through their role on best talent. And then the last piece will just be briefly discussing after this 4 hours, what is their implementation plan? So after they get this education around their role, what type of things might they do next to ensure specific accountability? We often say, you know, education without implementation is entertainment. And so the reality is that once you get this new insight, it's extremely important to go into education or implementation, I should say. And then we'll end with next steps as it relates to where we're going from there. So in setting the stage, this picture here is what we call best talent. And so what does best talent mean? Well, one, it means people are just coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, but there's also this component that this picture highlights is that they're excited to be with one another. You know, sometimes we get around different people and it's a miserable experience. So we don't want that to take place. We believe that best talent means that you are getting the best talent from all backgrounds. And in order to really understand the concept of best talent, you almost have to move from individual hiring to more company hiring mindset. You can't just think about filling positions. Filling positions is going to be, and if it has not already become, a dying process. The best talent is the collection of insights that you bring around getting the best talent from everywhere. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about best talent. Now, the other side of best talent deals with kind of hiring those who are similar to you. And that can look many different ways. So it could look like, okay, here's individuals who are of different backgrounds, probably similar culture, but set up in a way where they do the same things in the same way. It could be about just having people who you're very comfortable and friendly with, such as these young ladies in this post. It could be around, okay, I want some different men, but I want them all to be extremely handsome and weigh 160 pounds and have on beautiful outfits. Okay. Then it could be, you know, I want people who have similar values. This is a picture of my fraternity brothers, kind of in you know, all having some similar values, but we're connected. And again, maybe not exposed to all the differences in the world. And then this last picture is interesting because here's two young ladies who look very different. They happen to be twins. They're twins. So what we often say, I don't care if you're different as long as you're just like me. So to break this kind of mold of best friend hiring or hiring like me, we need to expand our lens on how we view this topic of best talent. So again, we're not saying these are bad connections and relationships, but if you limit yourself to a certain type, you're not helping your organization bring the best talent to the workforce. All right, so the purpose of the best talent education in itself is to really ensure ownership in the organization and accountability in the people managers for diverse representation. So when we start talking about best talent, we're talking about ownership in the organization and accountability in the people managers for diverse representation. And it really goes, it shouldn't even say purpose of best talent education, but the purpose of the best talent process. This is the goals that we're looking to achieve. Okay. So a question for you to start putting into chat is just, what are the challenges you face in your organizational role achieving diverse representation? What are the challenges you face in your role achieving diverse representation? So I'm going to pause for about a minute and a half and allow for you to kind of put your questions into chat. This does not mean that this will be the only place you can utilize chat. You can utilize chat throughout the webinar, but this is the first place where we'd like you to kind of give input around what do you see as the challenges achieving diverse representation. I am being joined on the webinar by my colleague, Jody, who is sitting on pins and needles as she's looking at that chat box. Just with those great questions to enter into. How you doing today, Jody?
I'm doing wonderful. Wonderful.
Good.
Just waiting for some responses to come in, Doug.
Okay, fantastic. A wonderful Jody means that there's a happy life. So we're glad to hear that. Good deal. Good deal.
So yes, we ask you to just go ahead and put your comments regarding that into the questions section of your control panel, and that will come to us, and then that will help us facilitate a good discussion here with Doug. So what are the challenges that you face achieving diverse representation in your organization?
Okay, so as we wait for those questions, we're going to continue. Please feel free. Again, I want to just restate throughout this process, entering comments, questions into the kind of chat box so we can make sure the things that are front of mind for you are being addressed as we go through this process.
We have one participant who commented that managers don't think about hiring strategies until they have an open position in front of them. Then they have to hire yesterday, so it creates a sense of urgency there. Another person has said insurance industry is mainly consisting of white males in that industry, and that limits the pools for hiring. Do all the various entities understand what diversity really means to achieve diverse representation? So there's an educational factor there.
Yes.
We have a few more. Do you want to start addressing some of those right now, Doug?
Yep. Let me start as quickly as I can, because with those alone, we could be here for the hour. You get what you asked for, and I appreciate you sharing. I think one of the first ones is just around hiring managers being strategic versus kind of being daily or immediate focused. And that kind of urgent focus does operate against being able to look at hiring as a long-term strategic process. And some of the things we'll be sharing today can help that to happen, but it does create a barrier. And then in some industries, it's just as you look at the different talent bases that are out there, you're not seeing, talent that would fit the roles. And so one of the things that I think organizations who are very good at this is doing, we won't get into that a lot today because it differs for every industry we work in, but how do you look at relevant experience as a way to fill positions? Relevant experience as a way to fill positions. one of the recent studies I read about 2 years ago was around how people who have music majors can easily adjust to scientific work based on the way in which they have been taught how to do music. And so there are organizations and research departments who started to expand their profile and seek music professionals, and found not only that they were able to do the job, but their strategic thinking around music gave them added insights on how to do that well. So all of that story is meant to say, how do we expand the box and also start what we call pipeline efforts to really give that box some more power as well. We wait till people get out of college to get them interested in our industry. Sometimes we need to begin much earlier to make that happen, much earlier to make that happen. Okay, so did want to comment on those two. We'll keep them going. When I get tired of talking, I'll get another question and we'll kind of keep going through as we go through the day. So thank you for those. And I know there's a few more in there. We have not get it. We might not get them all, but it will be our goal to at some point in time touch base on most of those. So let me go for a second on best talent overview. And then, from there, we'll probably again get back to some of the questions. So when we look at this overview on best talent, what are we really talking about? So here's the areas of focus for best talent. The first one is acquisition. You want to acquire the best people from all backgrounds. We realize over the long haul, this is only a component of making sure that you get diverse representation and it gets sustained within the organization. So you also have to get involved with development, which is attached to growth and advancement. You also have to get involved with maximizing their performance and leveraging them. So putting them in special assignments and special roles so they can kind of get new insight and exposure to others. And then all of that leads to retention of commitment and loyalty. Our focus for this webinar is around really acquiring and achieving best talent in the acquisition space. Just want to be clear that that is not the totality of this work if you really want to achieve best talent in your organization. So what are the key components of change? I'm glad you asked that question. What are the key components of change? So the first one is commitment. So if a company committed to the value of diverse representation, establish meaningful accountability. That's very important as it relates to long-term success. The other one is competence. Are people managers culturally competent in assessing and selecting the best talent from all backgrounds? The third one is, our people managers have a focused, strategic direction and plan to achieve diverse representation. To achieve diverse representation. So many times, one of these components is often left out. As organizations are more sophisticated in the game, they'll see the commitment, and then they'll have different things that they expect from managers, but the competence piece is still lacking. And they'll call me up and say, Doug, we got all these things in place and they still hiring the same type of people. What do we need to do to move them to the next level? Other organizations have not even started this process, so they might need all three of the C's. But if you don't look at the C's in a way where they all are necessary, you'll probably fall short of your goal. So you need a commitment, you need competent managers, and you need a course of action, as one of our colleagues mentioned earlier, when they're looking at this in a very strategic way. So let me highlight how this ensuring the best talent overview or process looks. So first we have to establish what is the accountability and what are the measures that we're going to be looking at as it relates to diverse representation. Again, a lot of the organizations we work with, they have that established already. If not, you can gain support there to get that done so you know what True North looks like around achieving diverse representation. And then the second component deals with competence. How do leaders manage their personal biases and expand their profile of success? So there's a lot of talk right now around unconscious bias and how does that show up? And then there's organizational biases, but individuals have biases that get in the way of their selection of talent, which is different than them. We get involved with comfort hiring versus diverse hiring. And so how do we help people manage that? And the reason why it's personal is because everyone has a different connection to what's comfortable for them. So even if you're diverse, if you're hiring everybody who's like you have a problem as well if you're not expanding your lens around how to get this done. And then the third part is course. So how do you create a plan based on here's my hiring opportunities, here's what my organization looks like today, here's where I'm not seeing different backgrounds, here's the plan I plan to put in place to enhance the best talent from all backgrounds in my area of focus. But the second component of this, which I think is even more important, is how do you ensure advocacy? So we'll often hear from leaders, man, I'm not hiring, I don't have any openings, why should I be caring about this? Well, everybody can be an advocate. So if you're not hiring, you can still be mentoring. You can still be giving access and support. You can be giving opportunities for people to work on teams. You can be doing things that can help in the process of creating best talent. So this whole process is the best talent kind of cycle or overview that we get involved with. Now to detail it a little bit more, meaningful accountability, we define the focus areas, develop accountability system, and then share expectations. So if we're in nursing in a hospital, women is not their area of opportunity. So we define the focus areas of opportunity. Where are you not seeing diverse talent? Is it a generational issue? Is it an ethnic issue? What is the issues that you're kind of not seeing people from different backgrounds? Then you create tangible measurements around that. You establish a baseline, sets goals, and then you monitor progress. We like to use the word monitor versus measure. Measure means you're actually counting. Monitoring means you're just assessing, has it changed? We had 10 opportunities, we hired 10 of our cousins. That's not good. So you're monitoring progress to see where things are. In the competence area, we're dealing with your personal biases. Not general biases, but your personal biases. How do you identify, challenge, and manage those? And then you're expanding your profile of success. Examining, acknowledging where you might have biases, and then expanding how you might see it differently. And then on the ensure advocacy piece for understanding options, you're kind of knowing your interests and then determining involvement. So in other words, you're not hiring people, but you're looking to say, wow, I would love to be on the recruiting team. I would love to be a mentor. I would love to sponsor. Those are things that can take place there. And then lastly, you just execute your plan. Review your status, identify the gaps, and pursue opportunities. Now, at the bottom of all of these slides is this word assessment, because this is done by way of knowing where you are now, where do you want to be, and how do you close that gap. So here's a poll. When it comes to achieving diverse representation, where do you see the biggest opportunity in your organization? Is it the commitment place, the competence place, or the course place? Where do you see the biggest opportunity?
And so again, we'll put that up onto the screen there, and if you can just make your selection, that would be helpful to us. Again, feel free to put your questions into the box and send those over to us, and either Jody or I will field those and ask them of Doug. So when it comes to achieving diverse representation, where do you see the biggest opportunity in your organization? Is it at the level of commitment, competence, or course? And so we'll leave this open for just a few more seconds to make sure everyone has a chance to vote, and then we can continue on. And so Doug, there was another interesting comment that came in before. We see representation at entry-level positions, but the challenge is bulking the pipeline vertically and across all business functions. So
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I'll get at that one once we get this vote. Yeah, great question.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll go ahead and close the poll here, and I'll put the results up on the screen. It looks like 42% indicate that competence is the biggest opportunity. Course is represented by 39% and commitment by 18%.
Okay, good. It's interesting, having been in this business for over 25 years, when I first started, commitment was probably 90%, but things have changed. So organizations see the value, they see how this can help, they create different infrastructure around it, but they're still not seeing outcomes because they don't want or not either competent or don't know the direction to go. Organizations still, though, some 18% are in the place of, okay, we got to see more of a commitment. I think one of the realities of this vote is to understand that all three of these are committed if you're going to, or are needed, I should say, if you're going to make a difference. Yeah. I want to go quickly to the question that you had posed, a comment that was made, Barbara, around, we might see diverse representation either at lower levels or in certain pockets of the workplace. One of the more known dynamics is in the human resource organization is oftentimes pretty highly populated with women personnel. Certain functions are highly populated with certain populations. And so it's nothing wrong with that, but do we really have a diverse representation across the organization and at all levels? And at all levels. Those two components are very important. And that's when we start looking at meaningful accountability and establishing goals. We're taking that look. I started the webinar off saying we cannot achieve diverse, I shouldn't say cannot, because you need to look at diverse representation in every hire, but you also have to have a strategic plan that begins to highlight it for the entire organization.
Hey, Doug, this is
Yeah.
Jody. We had another really interesting question come in around motivation. What if a leader gets the value business case of diversity and may even, quote unquote, get it, but has no motivation to change since he is in the place he likes?
Right. No question. That's a great question. And I think it's the importance of both having inspiration and insights at two levels, the personal level and the organizational level. So people will do things for two reasons. One, because they want to, two, because they have to. Even if you put them in the have to category, you want to concentrate on what is the value. What is the value? But sometimes to move people motivationally, you got to demand it. Now, the hope is that after demanding it, they see the difference, they see the opportunities that this can bring to the table, and then they begin to buy in on their own. But you have to look at, again, both the personal motivation and the organizational motivation. And I think today we're trying to enhance this workshop the personal motivation around it and how it can help them be a better leader, better manager, and achieve their goals. As many of you on this call probably realize that executives do things, but it all falls on middle managers to actually implement. And they control the culture. So how do we support them in a way that we can help them do that well? Okay? So great question. The best talent implementation steps, there's pre-workshop for the first two. So before you even get into the workshop, this accountability and measure component is being discussed. Then there's the workshop where you're doing the biases and the profile. Then the post-workshop is the advocacy and executing the plan. So one of the major points here is not just about the education, but what do you wrap around it to really move the needle forward. The assessment process is to really understand the level of maturity of the diverse representation strategy for each organization. One of the challenges I have seen over my years in this work is people starting to do things before they're ready to do them. So when I first started this work, there was no best practice information. Today, it's a lot of best practice information. So is the best practice information best for you is a big question. Is the best practice information best for you is the big question. So I like to look at this best practice word as what is our best practice? And so how do we tailor our work? I'm often called, they say, hey, Doug, I see that McDonald's is one of your clients. Can you help us do what McDonald's does? And they don't even have a definition of diversity yet. McDonald's been at it over 40 years. So you have to be able to relatively move this journey forward. And so this assessment process really allows us to come in, understand what you're doing, what you've done, and acknowledge it, but then say, here's the next steps to take so you can get into this best talent overview in the proper way. Okay? So let's get into some of the quick highlights. Any other questions come up? Let me just open up for a second. Any other questions that we haven't touched on that may have shown? We're
yes,
good?
Doug, this is Jody. We just had a new one, and it's around resources. I feel like everyone is tapping into the same organizations and conferences, and it's not working. What else can we consider outside of networking?
Great question. You know, the initial stages of pursuing diverse representation really deals with going to what might be deemed the common places, you know, the common places, and trying to pursue talent in the common places. And there's nothing wrong with that because there's great talent at the Hispanic MBA conference and the Women Engineering Association. There's great talent in those places. I think the big change that I'm seeing over time is this pipeline effort. And then I think the other piece, won't spend a lot of time here, but I do want to talk about it, is building real relationships versus attending events. Building real relationships versus attending events. You know, so I started my career at Procter & Gamble, and I sold toilet paper at the time, and I like my job a lot more now, but that was a good beginning to the career. And Procter & Gamble, when I was in college, had sent me all these letters and came to my campus wanting to know who I was. And I asked them, I said, how y'all know all this about me? They said, we make companies aware of the type of talent that we want, and we pursue them personally because we know they'll have many options as it relates to when they get out of school. So it was not about an event, it was about a relationship. And organizations who do that well are not looking just to establish kind of what I would call superficial relationships, but genuine relationships to go beyond the common events and build contacts. So at my university, they knew professors well, that if the professors seen talent that they would like, the professors would call them up and do some recruiting for them. That's building relationships that are sustainable. So again, just insights on that question that was asked. Let's shift and talk a little bit about some of the highlights of the workshop so you can get just a flavor for the content that we would be sharing. And so when we look at the workshop highlights, there's 5 different areas in which that's kind of broken down to. One is the first is the business value. The second one is around personal biases, the profile of success, ensuring advocacy, and executing the plan. So again, just to give you some concept of the content, we want to go into these. So let's start off with business value. And this is a model that we often discuss in our work, but it's really important when you're starting to want to get managers at the level of understanding where's the value coming from. So companies will say we're going to be more innovative, we're going to be no collaborative. Okay, that's good, but what does this mean for me as a manager? So what this model says to the left axis is what we call performance, and down below we have time. And so what it does is it compares homogeneous teams to diverse teams. So the performance cycle for homogeneous teams is they start off real strong because of their comfort with one another. And then they start to level off because the different ideas start to diminish because they're so similar as it relates to who they are. When you start to look at a diverse team, the way that works is they'll start off with a few challenges, trying to get together, trying to understand the best way to navigate. But once they work their way through that, their performance goes straight to the top. And it's continuous because of the fact it's continual because they know each other well and they're bringing the different insights. Because the reality is that you don't get the new insights. However, we continually hire in comfort and best friends versus working into this new arena. Now, how you get this curve to go towards the diverse teams is really about inclusive skills, collaboration, but the outcome is that will be the sustainable organization of the future. So when we talk about business value, we're not really talking about organizational business value, even though it's important. What is the business value for you as a manager leading people? The next topic is really about kind of managing personal biases. And there's a lot done in the space of personal biases. But we really like to take a look at it around what are your personal biases in the workplace? So we ask individuals who are participating, give me an example of a good hire and an example of a bad hire. You just write down the names of those individuals who you might deem to be a good hire and who you might deem to be a bad hire. And then what we do is we have them take that name and fill out this chart. And there's different types of dimensions that we can put on this chart. But we say, now, who are you? What is your background as it relates to this chart? And how did the good hire match up with you? How did the bad hire match up with you? And so what this does, it begins to bring out those subtleties and unconscious biases around what's really important on how I connect. Now, sometimes that could be in the gender ethnic place. Sometimes that could be in the communication style place. Some of these biases you will know, others you won't know. So we have individuals assess that in relationship to how they see the world. And this is not about criticism, but it's really about helping people to expand their profile and think about talent in a bigger way. I remember when I first started doing headhunting, I did headhunting for a while, and I was in sales. And I loved the salespeople who used to use their hands and make a lot of noise and crack jokes. I said, man, I wonder why I love these people so much. Well, they're just like me. And then the third one that and again, I'm just giving highlights here, is around the profile of success, the profile of success. So when we look at the profile of success, we say it's about examining, acknowledging, and expanding. And so when you look at the selection process, and after this slide here, we'll take a break and see if there's any questions that came through. In the selection process, you also have a want box, which says, here's the additional things that could add value. This would be helpful. And then you also have this third box, which is called my box, the things I like and dislike. I had a woman say to me, I will never, she has been in HR for about 30 years and said she's never passed on a resume that had a spelling error. Now, obviously, a spelling error isn't a good thing to have on a resume. But I'm sure there's a lot of great talent who made that error that she just threw them away. Because in her box, that was just unacceptable. And so we create our box like it's a real box versus really just packed our personal biases and how we see the world. But we make those biases a reality. Good people, you need to get conscious of this so you can begin to expand your box on the profile of success. So let me pause for a second. See any other questions come through, any other comments, things I might have showed up since I've been sharing on these highlights.
Yes, Doug, we actually had one more that just came in. How do you bring diversity into a geographical area without it?
This is a great question. It's not an easy one to answer. But one of the things that we're doing now, and I think many companies are doing, is starting to create what they call community efforts in order to get diverse representation in their organization. So we had a major organization have a facility in a non-diverse market. So they went out to we set up something called One Community, and it was around the town. And they set up a relationship with the mayor, the universities, the schools, the businesses, everyone to say, hey, look, if we're going to stay competitive, we have to be attractive to people from other backgrounds. And that's way beyond just my company, but it has to happen in the whole city. And so what do we need to do to make us more attractive? And so what had taken place, they had worked real hard to bring people into a town, but the people left because their kids wasn't being treated well at the school, or their spouses wasn't being treated well as they went into some of the retail outlets. So they began to make this a community effort. And so now they have this thing again called One Community. And so each entity of that knows their role as it relates to inspiring people to be there who are from different backgrounds. And then they had to actually do some different things. They had to bring in, people from different religions as religion leaders and hair care people, do different things in order to be attractive. That's a big effort. So I'm acknowledging that. But if you really want to make a difference, that's one of the ways to go about it. But the second one is just not to assume that people want to be in these extremely big cities where everybody is different just because they happen to be a little different. So be honest, communicate your organization in your city in a real way. So talk to people, say, hey, look, this city is not very diverse. I like it for these reasons. We're working on this. Anything you find out that you think would help us, please do that. But we want you to be here. Sometimes we sell a bill of goods. Oh, we're the best town in the world. We treat everybody lovely. And then when they run into something, that false advertisement can create a challenge. So there's two big points I've made here. One is creating a systemic change process at a larger level. And secondly is just honest communication around where you are. And you'll be surprised, big cities used to be attractive. They're not as attractive as they used to be, especially when you start to get involved with family age kids and things of that nature. So stay the course, but be willing to learn new things to make a difference there. Yeah? Fantastic. I'm on the road. I wish you all wasn't on mute so you can give me some feedback, but I can see your smiles through the PowerPoint, so we'll keep rolling along. This next one is real big called ensure advocacy. Ensure advocacy. And I want to reemphasize what is the big point we're making here. Ensuring advocacy means this. There'll be times as a manager when your area is not growing. It might even be letting people go. And they're like, why you have me talking about the best talent? I can't play a role. Well, yes, you can play a role. You can play an active role as far as assisting the organization with the movement and development of talent as far as making a difference. So a couple of things we want to share here is first the model we call the PI model. You may have heard of this, but PI really stands for performance, image, and exposure. Performance, image, and exposure. And two big points I want to make with this model is that some people believe if they perform very well, they're going to get to a high level in the organization. And sometimes that's true. But performance really just identifies job guarantee. It does not solidify advancement. Performance, you keep your job. Advancement, you need image and exposure. image, and exposure. And what happens here is that people who you are comfortable with, you give them feedback at the performance level, the image level, and you give them exposure. People who you're not comfortable with, many times we just give required feedback at the performance level and not image and exposure feedback. A story I frequently tell: early in my career, my manager said to me, Doug, he said, next meeting we go to, I want you to be the third person to speak. The third person to speak. I said, okay, no problem, I'll be the third person to speak. So the meeting, the manager asked a question. I was about to jump in like I normally do. I said, no, let me hold off for a minute. I got to be the third person to speak. So the person, first or second person, said what I was going to say. They asked another question. I was about to jump in like I normally did. Somebody else said what I was going to say. By the time the whole meeting was over, I didn't say anything. So manager came up to me after the meeting. He said, Doug, what happened in the meeting? I said, I didn't say anything. He said, why not? He said, I said, others shared stuff that I was going to share. He said, Doug, here's a learning I want you to have. If you keep talking all the time, people are going to get tired of listening to you. If you want to make an impact, you want your voice to be like a special voice, so just relax so that by the time you give insight, it's very unique. They say you have that in you, but many times you're sharing so much, they can't pick that up. See, that's not what you would call necessary feedback. That's image feedback that helped me to grow. When we think of image, we think about the look. That's only a small part. How are you showing up? And people that get ahead get a lot of image and exposure feedback. People who just perform, they get mad. They have a job, but they wonder why all these others are getting ahead. So managers not only have to be responsible for the P, but they got to get involved with the I and the E if they're going to move the organization forward. And so one of the other key things that we talk about, we actually will set up, well, what might you do? What might you do? I do a lot of work with the executive teams and succession planning, and certain people will pop up and they'll say, yeah, I'm going to work with that person. Someone else will pop up. They say, I'm going to watch that person. So you're going to work with one person and watch another one. Who do you think is going to get promoted? The person you're working with or the person you're watching? And many times the person you're working with is your best friend. It's the one you're comfortable with. So leaders have to understand this concept if they're going to move people forward. And so as we get into, well, what are some of the possible advocacy options? You're not hiring, but what things might you do? Well, formally, you can mentor, sponsor, recruit. Informally, team assignments, special projects, key development opportunities, access to key events, support key roles in industry associations, because you're really looking for this total development so people can go to the next level. So these are just some of the kind of advocacy options that are out there. And then lastly, we go quickly into the management implementation plan and what might that look like. So managers, they just need to, one, to execute their plan, you need to just review their status, identify gaps, and pursue hiring opportunities. But hopefully they will do these. So some people say, well, they're doing that now, I don't see anything different. Well, the difference is having a different mindset around how to approach it. And then in the advocacy place, what they would do is say, hey, how do I want to help others? Where might I play a role? What are all the options? Let me key in on my interests and then determine their involvement to make that happen. So let me ask this poll of everyone. How effective are your people managers at addressing diverse representation today?
So we'll go ahead and put that poll up on the screen here. We would like to know how effective your people managers are at addressing diverse representation today. Are they not effective, somewhat effective, effective, or very effective? And while we wait for some of those results to come in, Doug, we had another comment/question here. One of our participants says that in their organization, diverse employees don't feel valued and they end up leaving the organization early after being hired or are not engaged during their time there.
Yeah, yeah, that's a common concern, Barbara, that we see in the workplace. And even as we talked about this webinar, we said it was primarily focused on acquisition. For true long-term sustainable success, you need acquisition, you need development of people, you need to leverage them, and that leads to retaining them. And one of the keys there is just having cultural competence. How do we understand and work with people who are different and value different approaches so that you can understand where they're coming from? Sometimes as we deal with people, we try to make them like us instead of valuing them like who they are. And it's really a personal process as far as, how do you get that to happen? You got to know your people as individuals. It was so funny when I first moved to, I started my career in Boston. I'm from the East Coast. I moved out to Chicago. My manager said to me, Doug, I really want you to be successful here. I want you to get ahead. I want you to have all access to whoever you need. And then they ended the discussion by saying, so Doug, here's a list of all the Black people. So I got a little mad. I threw the list back. I don't want to list all the Black people. About 2 weeks later, I said, well, where's that list of all the Black people? I really want to know who they are. And what is the power of this story I'm telling is that what people need in order to feel valued and respected and be able to be their best, managers need to know that. And that's going to be personal. So in the first example, she threw the Black list at me. The second example, I asked for it. So as leaders, if we want to retain people and move them from just being good hires, we got to know what's going to keep them there. What's going to make this environment effective for them? What expectations do they have? How can they be supported? Let them know your expectations of them so that they feel valued and leveraged. We often think people should feel happy for being there, and that will soon become your ex-employee. Because while you're hoping they feel valued, happy, somebody else is going to actually value and leverage them. So we need to tell that holistic story and create that holistic competence in order to achieve that outcome. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. That's fantastic. So I'm going to put the poll questions here, the results here up on the screen and talk through that for just a moment here. So we asked, how effective are your people managers in your organization? How effective are they at addressing diverse representation today? And most people say somewhat effective. 74% are saying somewhat effective. 10% each are saying either not effective at all or generally effective, and 5% are saying very effective. So interesting results there.
Yep. Good. And I think as you look at those results, what I'm kind of concluding is there's pockets of success. And so when you look at overall organization, sometimes that's a hard measure, but there's pockets of success, and there's also times where they're more successful than others. And we want to value and respect that too. So some people are very good in the recruiting place, whatever place they may be. How do we continue to enhance their capability so they might have overall success in getting this done? Yeah. I'm going to share a couple of more slides, and then, that concludes my time. See if there's any questions that you might have around this. And these slides are just around what might be the next steps attached to what has been presented here today. What might be the next steps attached to that? And so one, please complete the survey that will be coming out to you immediately. And then one possibility is to schedule just a 30-minute complimentary consultation to just talk about your organization. Everything that has been shared has been at a very general level, okay? Complimentary presentation around this topic at your organization where you might share with others, and that would just involve travel if it involves that to take place and you're not in the area. And then also just to really look at a best talent workshop, this 4-hour workshop we're talking about, get some managers together to actually experience it, to get a feel for is it of value before you make an overall commitment. And for being a part of this, if you kind of can get that done within the next 30 days, you can get a 50% discount just to have the experience around that. Yeah, the experience around that. So let me pause here, see if there's any other questions or comments from you.
Yeah, this one just came in. This question relates to convincing managers of their return on investment. In an organization, say the government, where the success of the organization does not depend on the usual revenue, how does one convince them that diversity is of true value?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And I'm going to answer it from a kind of influential or sales perspective and then work my way back to the direct answer to your question. I started off, as I mentioned earlier, selling toilet paper. Toilet paper had 83 specs, so 83 different features: soft, size, what tree it came from, how much dye. But they would always say you should never use more than 3 to make a sale. So when you're talking about influencing managers who don't have profit responsibility, things of that nature, you got to find out what's important to them. What's important to them, and influence from that connection standpoint. So if you're in an organization where speed of delivery is the key focus, tie this to speed of delivery. If safety is of the key focus, tie this to safety. So there's really not a magic wand, but I think as we in human resources and practitioner roles are better able to tell that specific story, we can kind of motivate people to be more committed to it. So even in this session that we train, we talk about good hires and what works for you, what's the results you're looking for, so that the managers can make a tie-in. This is going to make my world better if I do that.
So we also had another question come in. It stated, this was a good one as well. Too many people managers in my organization say they support diversity goals, but then I find they treat it like a quota, fulfilling target hire numbers. How could we overcome this?
Yeah, that's a great question, as you mentioned, Jody. I think when they start looking at a quota, that means the value has not yet been established. So if I don't see the value, I'm just looking at it as a task or quota. So there's some more work done or needed to be done in this value place. So one of the things, again, that has been missing is that those who do this well have established the value. It's not that they're better at it, but they have bought into, for one reason or another, why this is important for them to do. And for many managers, like our colleague asked this question, that is not established. And therefore, they start to look at it as more of just another task, another little nuisance that they got to address. And they start tying it into quotas. I don't really see the value. They'll say things like, I just want the best person, but they got me messing around with this diversity thing. So we still have work to do to establish that value. And this work, which makes it even tougher, is kind of one leader at a time. So I'm not saying organizational efforts have made great headway, because I've been around this space for 25 years, but the new headway is going to be one leader at a time. Yeah. Any other things here? Well, we are always available and can always be contacted. And the many different ways that can happen is listed here on this sheet. But we're also just very ready to support and answer personal questions that you may have in relationship to what we're talking about. Again, my personal background was sales, then executive search, which really dealt with the acquisition of talent, and then 25 years as a diversity consultant. So what we have established within Kaleidoscope Group is an understanding of how to bring all that together and help managers, help leaders commit to this topic and then see the value. And then once they see the value of having that different talent, they start to sell one another, and you start moving from hiring individuals to really hiring for the best talent of the organization, which we think will lead to all of the benefits of what our work is meant to achieve. I want to thank all of you, not knowing who you are and where you are, but appreciating you spending time with us on this webinar. Okay? Barbara?
Yes, thank you all for your time today, and we will be sure to get back to you. For those who requested the PowerPoint, we'll be sending that out to you probably within a day or so. Thank you again for your time, and have a great day.